my name is Reggie and today I'll be sharing with you my July wrap-up. In the month of July, I read 8 books. I got some great feedback last month when I ranked my wrap-up by my least favorite book to my favorite book throughout the video, so I'm going to continue doing that. If you like that, let me know or give this video a thumbs up. You should also subscribe to this channel. That lets me know you like the content I'm putting out and also will help you find out when I post new videos. But without further ado, let's get into the wrap-up. So the first book I have to share with you today is The Subtle Art of Not Giving Enough by Mark Manson. Kind of a self-help book that teaches you how to not give an F. However, that's kind of a misleading title. The focus of this book is actually more like readjusting what you care about, prioritizing the things that do matter to you versus don't matter to you. It's a very interesting concept. I don't mind that. However, there is some pretty sexist and just kind of annoying perspectives in his writing, and I could not get on board with this book, so I gave it 2 stars. I only didn't give it 1 star because there were still a lot of good points, just not enough to redeem it more than that. Next up, we'll talk about The Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I really just expected so much more from this book because I've heard such great things. Agatha Christie is like a classic author of mystery novel. I found this book to be pretty boring. I think the mystery aspect was really good. I liked the reveal and how the ending kind of played out. I found that to be super interesting. However, the journey to that was just pretty boring. I found certain things predictable, contrived, kind of there for plot purpose. There were definitely some sexist moments. Basically, the premise of this book is that there is a murder on a train. There just happens to be one of the world's greatest detectives on the train. It just so happens that the train gets stuck in a snowstorm and they have nothing else to do on this train but interview the passengers and try to figure out what happened. So already pretty contrived. The entire story is basically just the detective interviewing people and trying to figure out what's going on. And it's just like interview after interview, and I was just bored. Wasn't a huge fan of this. Don't think I will be reading another Agatha Christie book. However, if you think I would like one and have a recommendation, let me know in the comments down below. But I ended up giving this one 2.5 stars. Next up to talk to you today, I have Alana the First Adventure. This is the first book in the Song of the Lioness Quartet, which is the first series within the Tortall world. This is my dear friend Randa, who you might have seen in a couple of recent videos. This is her favorite author and one of her favorite stories. So I promised I would read this, and I read the first book, this book, like 3 years ago. Never continue with the series. I ended up getting the first book on audiobook so I could reread it. I reread it this month and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I'm really excited to see how this world kind of expands and how the story continues. Next up, I finally have a book I can hold up for you, and this is The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace. First of all, the greatest of titles, and also like this matte black cover. I'm really impressed with the way this looks as a book. It's beautifully constructed. This is modern day poetry collection and I enjoyed it. However, I don't think I'm the biggest fan of modern day poetry. It's in that style that's very like minimalistic and also kind of quirky or cutesy in the way it's formatted. I definitely enjoyed what Amanda was saying in this, and it is her life, so it's hard to judge because a lot of this was taken from her very true and personal experiences. That being said, like I said, I'm just not a huge fan of modern poetry. At least I haven't found a collection I particularly love. I did like this more than Milk and Honey, which if you look at my raw ratings would not be reflected because I think I gave Milk and Honey 4 stars. However, upon reflection, that's more like a 2.53 stars, whereas this is definitely a 3.5 stars for me. But if you have any modern day poetry collections that you would like to recommend to me, I'm definitely on board for reading more, especially if my library has them, because I want to find some modern poetry that I like. I just haven't found my thing yet, I guess. Next up, I have to talk about Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a lot of people's favorite book, so I was expecting to love this, and while I didn't hate it, I was definitely disappointed by what I got out of this book, because on top of hearing great things, the concept is just kind of something that draws my attention and seems like something I would be super interested in. We have a post-apocalyptic world. In this post-apocalyptic world, we are following a traveling orchestra slash theater troupe, and like that just sounds like something that would captivate me. Post-apocalyptic, we have the 2 perspectives kind of going between when the world was like normal or slash falling apart, and now this like time after everything has kind of been going on. And I love the stories that are dystopian or post-apocalyptic where we get both perspectives or kind of the descent into the world instead of just the after. I love that kind of thing. Also really love theater and orchestra music, instrumental music, all that kind of stuff, so I thought I would just be gravitated to the story. However, it just was not for me. I've heard it's beautifully written. I listened to the audiobook, so maybe I missed a lot in translation. It may have just not sat with me the same way. However, just wasn't overly impressed with the way things were constructed, the world that we got, the characters that we met, etc. So I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. Next up, I have for you The Dark Prophecy by Rick Riordan. This I also gave a 3.5 stars, but this is the favoritist of the 3.5 stars. This is the second book in the Trials of Apollo series. I haven't read his King Chronicles, so that cannot be included. However, excluding that, this is my least favorite series that Rick Riordan has written that I've read. However, that's not to say it's bad. It's super great. I totally still recommend reading it. It's really funny, and what I appreciated a lot about this book is there's definitely a huge amount of character growth. In the first book, you see Apollo. Let me back up. This book follows the god Apollo in the Percy Jackson world after he has been stripped of his god status and cast down from Mount Olympus by Zeus as a mortal 16-year-old, and he has to kind of figure out what he's going to do, if he's able to redeem himself to Zeus, if he's going to be able to become a god again, etc., etc. The first book kind of delves into all of that, and he's still super stuck up. What I appreciated about book 2 is that we saw a huge amount of character growth from Apollo. What I disliked so much about the first book in terms of like comparatively is that his character was not the most engaging and interesting protagonist in the Percy Jackson world, or in Rick Riordan stories at least, and that kind of hampered my reading experience. That's because we're kind of bogged down with all this history we have with Apollo in the previous series and the actions he's taken and the character he's been. Next up, I'll be talking about Heartless by Marissa Meyer. Heartless is a prequel retelling following the Queen of Hearts and how she became the way she is. So this follows her as she's a young girl who wants to be a baker and whose parents are pressuring her into a different world than what she wants. We see her fall in love, we see her with her friend, and we see her story come to a tragic end, as can be expected, as this is the story of how the Queen of Hearts became the Queen of Hearts. Just in traditional Marissa Meyer fashion, the story is really gripping. At first I was like, oh, this is super cheesy, and then you get super swallowed into the world and you just become enamored with it. The characters are incredibly lovable, and I became so attached to so many of them. I was impressed with what Marissa Meyer did in the course of one book. Super good job for that, because it did take me a couple books in the Lunar Chronicles series to get really invested in the characters, and it wasn't until the very last book in the series I was like, oh, these are so good. They're good, but like the last book really sold me. This book I was sold about maybe 100 pages in, which is a huge jump than like 3 books in. I really also enjoyed how Marissa Meyer weaved in the Alice in Wonderland narrative and the world into her own kind of unique story. It's still very unique, but it has heavy and extreme nods to Alice in Wonderland, Through the Looking Glass, and Lewis Carroll. Overall, this was such a good book and a very enjoyable read, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The last book I have to talk about today is Graceling by Kristen Cashore. This is the first book in the Graceling Realms companion series. This was really good. So we'll start off with a summary if I can do it justice. So this is a fantasy world that has 7 realms. Within this world, certain people are born with graces. Graces are visually depicted by discolored eyes. So like you have one color eye and another color eye. So 2 different color eyes. Being born graced means you're born with a super ability. This ability can be as benign and basic as swimming really fast or being able to weave baskets really well. This can be as helpful and important as survival skills or combat or anything that could be super useful and handy in a fantasy world. We follow our main character, who is a Graceling female of around teenage age, and she is working for one of the kings. And during the course of this book, we kind of see her figure out herself, figure out kind of the world she is living in and what she likes and dislikes about it, and there's a lot of like exploration of self in it, which is great. Exploration of worlds around you, which is amazing. There's discussion of sex and periods in a very tasteful and tactful way. This is like a wonderful book that I would happily and wonderfully give to a teenager. And I was just super impressed with this story and really am excited to continue on with it. So I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. So that's all for my July wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it quite a bit. If you did, you should subscribe to this channel, give me a thumbs up, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought of any of the books I read this month, and let me know what your favorite book you read this month. Clearly, the rating system, ranking the books, and my wrap up makes it really easy, but my favorite book I read this month was Graceling. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!
Baby, I beg you, yeah.